what we...
Are you completely stupid?
No, but I'll agree...
I think you might be.
I mean, I might touch you. Is that offensive?
I'd rather you didn't.
OK.
Every night from 10 till 2, Whaley's on the line for you. Give me a ring. I'll be there, the mega mouth of radio...
Do you think I would suit a hairpiece or not?
Yeah.
Do you think I would?
I like men to look like...
James Whale, Escon Farage, Tears, and a 30-year radio or you never saw coming. Watch the right S most feared voice say goodbye.
And in the case of my friend James Whale, he passed away yesterday at the age of 74. And what a character he was. I've known him from the mid-80s, actually. And he's a shock jock on TV. And first time I interviewed him, he was shaking. He was so nervous with everybody. We became very, very, very good friends. Last saw him a couple of weeks ago. And it's very sad. You don't really know what to say, but I know he was prepared for death. He was prepared, and Nadine, his wife, what an amazing woman. What an absolutely amazing woman. She looked after James, and she took care of his pain and everything, which is now gone. But her pain is ahead because she's left behind now, and they were very, very close. So Nadine, our condolences to you and to the whole family, and mate, we'll miss you.
James Whale, MBE, died yesterday, aged 74. Back in 1974, he began a phenomenon in this country which had started in America and never been seen before, and it was talk radio. Members of the public ringing in, having a conversation with a host, and the host could be nice to them, the host could be provocative. Let's see a little bit of some of James's moments over the years.
What happened to our freedom of speech? What we...
Are you completely stupid?
No, but I'll agree...
I think you might be.
I mean, I might touch you. Is that offensive?
I'd rather you didn't.
OK.
Every night from 10 till 2, Whaley's on the line for you. Give me a ring. I'll be there, the mega mouth of radio...
Do you think I would suit a hairpiece or not?
Yeah.
Do you think I would?
I like men to look like me. I like
I
that
do.
shaved off look. I think that looks great.
Well, you can't. I have no choice.
James Whale, irreverent, fun, always had a very, very big audience, whatever he did, on radio or on television, and was a broadcaster for 50 years. He was the king of late-night radio from 10 p.m. to 1 a.m., which he did year after year. And I have to say, most importantly, he was a friend. And I was very touched just a couple of weeks ago when he said, after 50 years of broadcasting, I would be his final ever interview. And I went down into his garden in Kent and sat with him. Here's a short clip of it.
Welcome to what may be my last interview. I've spent 50 years on the TV and the radio. I've had a great time. In fact, actually, a man who could spend another 50 years on TV or radio is my guest, Nigel Farage.
I think 50 years is a bit optimistic.
I don't know.
Well, yeah, and it was actually a very moving thing to do. Now, the remarkable thing about James for the last 30 years is when he went on the James Whale show, it wasn't just James. When I first went on in the late 90s, there was a producer. He wasn't just producing, but started to sort of intervene and talk and become part of it. And Ash Gould and James Whale on Talk TV became the most incredible double act. Ash, gosh, you guys had some fun, didn't you?
We did, man. I think that was the secret of why it went on so long. I mean, it was, well, we had a good chemistry, but that's probably what made it fun. So we stayed together for 30 years, apart from a little gap where he broke the broadcaster's code and had to go on the run like in The Godfather for a few years and then to come back when it all died down a bit. Yeah.
How did it start, Ash? Because, as I say, the first time I came on with you was 98, 99. You were at Talk Sport. And I'm, there with James, and suddenly there's the producer who you might hear in your ear, but suddenly the producer's talking live on air. How did this double act begin?
Well, I went to Talk Radio UK as it was in 95, and they said, do you want to work with James Whale? I go, yeah, brilliant, because I'd watched him when I was 18, and they put us together. And I also worked with a guy called Mike Allen sometimes at the weekend, and I was chipping in on his show. He was sort of a legend of Capital Radio, and and of hip hop in London. He basically brought hip hop, but he told James to try me. You know, I should put me on air, and that's basically how it started.
Amazing. I mean, obviously James's passing is very sad. It had been expected for a long time. Just give you a chance, Ash, to pay your tribute to James Whale.
Well, it was a fantastic, it was a dream show and a dream time to work with him, wasn't it? 30 years, when they said you're going to be working with him, you knew it was going to be exciting. Any other presenters, it would be all right and that, but you knew something was going to happen, and that was the great thing. He had such a great voice, and he could just roll a bit like yourself. He could just keep going for hours and hours talking. I mean, didn't make a lot of sense, but it sounded good. No, he was fantastic. He could just keep going, couldn't he? It was like beautiful.
And he also, but he had strong passions and strong beliefs. And actually, underneath it all, James's views were quite traditional, weren't they? Really?
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't at all like he was. He came across. I mean, he could be, but he was a very soft, warm guy, as you know. You've known him almost as long as I have. He was.
Yeah.
So yeah, he wasn't like that. Was like a defence mechanism, but a very caring guy. Yeah, and he had his views. He did change his mind. You remember, he was very pro-Remain, but we had that out of him. I think that was because his son's got an Italian restaurant that he has to keep banging out all the time. You get the pasta cheaper, don't you, if you're in the EU?
Ash, I tell you what, he was quite something, and I think
he was.
You got a great break in your career to team up with James for the last 30 years, and thank you. And thank you so much for joining us this evening.
And thank you for being there, Nigel.
James Whale's funeral wasn't just a farewell to one man, it was the moment the last brick fell out of the wall that once protected British popular culture from the woke steamroller. When I watched Nigel Farage stand there, collar up, voice cracking, praising a bloke who made his living by saying the unsayable, I felt the ground shift. The establishment hates Whale because he proved that millions of ordinary Brits still crave blunt truth, not BBC therapy speak. They never forgave him for turning late-night radio into a pub without closing time, and now they are dancing on his grave while pretending to mourn. I will not let that stand. Let me remind you what the man actually did. In 1974, the BBC and the Post Office still ran a cosy duopoly on the airwaves. Pirate radio had been crushed by Harold Wilson's Marine Broadcasting Offences Act. Into that sterile playground stepped Whale with a tape deck, a telephone, and the brass neck to ask callers, are you completely stupid? Overnight, he broke the Oxbridge monopoly on national conversation. The elites called him shock jock, the public called him the only host who sounded like them. Within 5 years, every commercial station in the land had copied the format. Without Whale, there is no Nick Ferrari grilling Sadiq Khan at 8 a.m., no Julia Hartley Brewer roasting Starmer over net zero. The entire talk radio industry that now terrifies ministers into U-turns was born in a shoebox studio above a record shop in Guildford. That is the scale of the cultural earthquake we are burying. Funny how the same people who laud Whale's pioneering spirit in death spent 30 years trying to choke him. Ofcom investigated him more times than it investigated Hugh Edwards' phone habits. In 1998, the then Independent Television Commission slapped talk radio with a $75,000 fine because Whale told a militant vegan that if God didn't want us to eat animals, he wouldn't have made them out of meat. A light-hearted jab, yet it was logged as offensive to minorities. Compare that to the deafening silence when Yasmin Alibhai-Brown called for the abolition of the monarchy on Channel 4. One rule for patriots, another for the Republican left. The same censors are now in government. Labour's 2024 manifesto pledges to expand Ofcom's remit to cover digital speech. Translation, they want to stuff the whale genie back into the bottle. Angela Rayner let the mask slip on BBC 5 Live last month. We can't allow opinion to masquerade as news. She means we can't allow you to have an opinion that hasn't been pre-chewed by a common-purpose graduate. Every time you ring up LBC to complain about small boat migrants, picture a civil servant in Canary Wharf tagging your number potential hate incident. That is the regime Whale spent his life fighting, and it is winning because we are too polite to say so. I was on his show 15 times, starting in 2001, when I warned that mass immigration would push house prices through the roof. The switchboard lit up like a Christmas tree. Half the callers called me racist. The other half yelled, finally someone said it. Whale sat back, lit a cigar on air, banned since 2007. He didn't care and growled, "Let the punters decide." Try doing that on Times Radio today, and you would be escorted off the premises by security. The BBC's editorial guidelines now classify offensive as anything that might cause personal distress. That's code for anything that upsets the woke guild. Notice who wasn't asked to speak at the funeral. Not a single serving BBC director, not one Sky News anchor, not even a token Conservative minister. The establishment sent Farage and Eamonn Holmes because they think that's the sum total of the populist right, a Reform MP and a breakfast TV veteran. They couldn't risk giving a platform to someone who still carries Wales' torch, say Mark Steyn or Julia Hartley-Brewer, or heaven forbid, Lawrence Fox. So the ceremony became a sanitized nostalgia trip rather than the call to arms Whale himself would have wanted. I swear I could hear him coughing bollocks from the coffin. Here is the unspoken truth hammering inside my skull. Whale's death clears the path for the final phase of the long march through the institutions. With him gone, no major broadcaster will dare give a weekly slot to a host who questions net zero, mass migration, or the trans agenda. GBNews is fighting heroically, but it is one channel against a cartel of state-funded broadcasters and tech giants who can throttle reach at the flick of an algorithm. YouTube already age restricts any clip that contains the phrase illegal immigrant. Spotify quietly removed Wales' back catalogue last year to comply with new policy on harmful content. First, they memory hole the archive, next they memory hole the man. And yet the public appetite for honest rowdy debate has not disappeared, it is simply driven underground. Telegram channels, private discords, pub backrooms, these are the new catacombs where Brits now speak freely. Every week I get invited to off-the-record gatherings in Essex pubs where ex-cops, nurses, cabbies trade stories. The media refuses to touch the 14-year-old girl quietly moved schools after being harassed by unaccompanied minors, the council that hired a drag queen to teach consent to 9-year-olds, the bishop who banned the Union Jack in his own cathedral. People are desperate for someone to give these stories a megaphone. Whale was that megaphone. I intend to keep his batteries alive, even if I have to build a pirate studio in my own loft. Listen to the tone of Farage's tribute again. He keeps repeating he was prepared for death. That is not incidental, it is a warning. Whale told me in June that doctors had offered him chemotherapy that might add 3 months but would rob him of his voice. He chose to keep the voice and lose the months. I'd rather go out talking, he said, than live as a bloody whisper. In other words, he accepted mortality so that truth could stay audible. If a dying man can muster that courage, what excuse do we healthy have for self-censoring on Facebook because an HR busybody might screenshot us? The immediate lesson for the right is simple: stop waiting for permission. Whale never asked Ofcom if he could question the EU or the Iraq War or the climate cult. He just hit the talkback button and asked. Every conservative commentator who prefaces a segment with "of course, we all agree racism is bad" is dancing to the censor's flute. Reclaim the language. Say what you mean. If they fine you, crowdfund the penalty and double down the next night. That is how Whale turned a 75,000 punishment into a ratings surge that kept him on air another 2 decades. Controversy is oxygen, apologizing is cyanide. Look at the demographic window closing. The last Britons who remember life before the 1997 Blair Revolution are now in their 50s. They are the only cohort that instinctively knows free speech was once the default. Under 30s have grown up with hate speech codes and algorithmic nudging. They think censorship is normal. We have maybe 10 years before that instinctive cultural memory is gone. Whale's death is therefore a D-Day for reclaiming the airwaves. If we do not launch new platforms, fund new voices, and break the Digital Safety Act before 2029, the game is up. The other side knows it, which is why they are rushing the online safety bill through Parliament before the public notices the small print. I, for one, will not retreat to podcasts behind paywalls. I am buying airtime on community radio stations from Plymouth to Peterborough, the little licenses the BBC forgot to crush. Friday nights, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m., same slot Whale used in 1974. No corporate ads, no Ofcom leash, just a telephone, a mixer, and the invitation: London, you're on. Are you completely stupid? If the state drags me to court, I will plead the Whale defense. The public has a right to hear raw opinion, and I have a duty to broadcast it. I dare them to send a dying medium's last honest host to prison. Let them explain to the Red Wall why a man quoting Churchill belongs in a cell while Anjem Chowdhury walked free for decades. So here's my promise to James and to every listener who still keeps a transistor under the pillow. I will not let your funeral be the requiem for free Britain. While I have breath, I will hijack their regulated silence and fill it with the same unruly laughter, belligerent curiosity, and plain common sense that you poured into the night for 50 years. If they close the stations, I will take to the rooftops with a megaphone. If they confiscate the megaphone, I will stand at Speaker's corner and shout. And if they arrest me for shouting, I will teach my children to whisper your questions into the dark until the dark answers.